Broadcasting live from California, get ready for an hour of pure, unapologetic conservative talk radio. Liberals beware, because this is the Wise Conservative Show.
Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard, but there was a shooting this morning in Virginia on GOP congressmen. They were practicing for the congressional baseball game. And so, yeah, that went down this morning. 4 people were actually shot, including Representative Scalise. So there was actually a lot that did go down this morning. But there's actually a lot of stuff that we've already know about it. The dead gunman, he is dead now. He was actually ID'd as this Trump-hating building inspector from Illinois. And he honestly, he took this AR-15 and he shot at all of the different congressmen. And he did critically injure Scalise. He's known to be in critical condition right now. He was hit in the hip. So this guy's name is James T. Hodgkinson. He's 66 years old, or he was, out of Illinois. He was gunned down by police to end the shooting at Simpson Field in Alexandria, Virginia. And he appears to have maintained 2 Facebook pages, and each have a lot of different profane anti-Trump posts on them, and glowing praise for Bernie Sanders. Now, Sanders definitely does not agree with what this man did. He called the shooting a, quote, despicable act. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, Texas Representative Roger Williams' congressional aide Zach Barth, Tyson's food director of government relations Matt Mika, and 2 Capitol police officers were also injured in the incident today. So 5 people, pardon me saying 4 earlier. Hodgkinson was shot by Capitol Police and died from his injuries. A number of anti-Trump Facebook posts were taken down today by Facebook. Were published to the page that appears to be Hodgkinson's just 2 days before he actually went out and did this shooting, so 2 days ago. One said, quote, Trump is guilty and should go to prison for treason. And another said, quote, make America great again. Resign. Hodgkinson's appears to have posted an editorial cartoon on the page that depicted Scalise behind a podium, addressing a group of hooded Ku Klux Klansmen. And he wrote in that post, here's a republic that should lose his job, but they gave him a raise. Now, it is confirmed that Hodgkinson apparently sent politically charged letters to the editor of the Belleville News, Democrat, which published a few of them. One letter that he wrote in 2011 stated, quote, it's time for the Republican congressmen to grow up. Maybe if they weren't so full of hate, they could see what they were doing to this country. Selling it to the Chinese just so they can keep more of the millions. Now, his brother told the New York Times that he wasn't pleased with the current political climate, as we can see from what he actually did here today. Quote, I know he wasn't happy with the way things were going, the election results and stuff. Hodgkinson was a member of the American Society of Home Inspectors, and the head of that office told Fox News that he dropped out in 2015 of that. And he owned a home inspection business but didn't renew his license in 2016. A Facebook spokesperson said that the pages were taken down after the shooting for violating that company's community standards. So he was definitely out there. He was believed to be a volunteer for Bernie Sanders' campaign. And he was very radical in his views, as you can see from all these different posts. Donald Trump, very shortly after the shooting, actually gave an address to the nation over this. So I have that for you guys, and so I'm going to play it right now. Take a listen.
As you all know, shortly after 7 a.m. this morning, a gunman opened fire on members of Congress and their staffs as they were practicing for tomorrow's annual charity baseball game. Authorities are continuing to investigate the crime, and the assailant has now died from his injuries. The FBI is leading the investigation and will continue to provide updates as new information becomes available. Congressman Steve Scalise, a member of House leadership, was shot and badly wounded and is now in stable condition at the hospital, along with two very courageous Capitol police officers. At least two others were also wounded. Many lives would have been lost if not for the heroic actions of the two Capitol police officers who took down the gunman despite sustaining gunshot wounds during a very, very brutal assault. Melania and I are grateful for their heroism and praying for the swift recovery of all victims. Congressman Scalise is a friend, and a very good friend. He's a patriot, and he's a fighter. He will recover from this assault. And Steve, I want you to know that you have the prayers not only of the entire city behind you, but of an entire nation and, frankly, the entire world. America is praying for you, and America is praying for all of the victims of this terrible shooting. I spoke with Steve's wife, Jennifer, and I pledged to her our full and absolute support, anything she needs. We're with her and with the entire Scalise family. I have also spoken with Chief Matthew Verderosa. He's doing a fantastic job, of the Capitol Police, to express our sympathies for his wounded officers and to express my admiration for their courage. Our brave Capitol Police perform a challenging job with incredible skill, and their sacrifice makes democracy possible. We also commend the brave first responders from Alexandria Police Fire and Rescue who rushed to the scene. Everyone on that field is a public servant. Our courageous police, our congressional aides who work so tirelessly behind the scenes with enormous devotion, and our dedicated members of Congress who represent our people. We may have our differences, but we do well in times like these to remember that everyone who serves in our nation's capital is here because, above all, they love our country. We can all agree that we are blessed to be Americans, that our children deserve to grow up in a nation of safety and peace, and that we are strongest when we are unified and when we work together for the common good. Please take a moment today to cherish those you love, and always remember those who serve and keep us safe. God bless them all. God bless you. And God bless America. Thank you.
So, as always, of course, Democrats and leftists are coming out of this and they're saying, we need stricter gun control. We need to put all this gun control onto this so that no one in the country can own a gun. And, well, that's what they do after every single shooting, folks. They take these horrible, tragic events and they use it as a launch pad for a political movement. They use it for their own political gain. And they do this every time. And so we've seen a lot of people, including the Virginia governor, talking about how there are too many guns on the street. And Governor Terry McAuliffe, the Virginia governor, he did then claim that 93 million people were killed by guns every day. 93 million. It's obviously a fake statistic that he's just pushing forward to try and get his narrative across. A fake narrative, but one that he wants pushed across. So radio host Dana Loesch actually ripped into him for making these comments, saying, quote, "This isn't a gun issue. The good guys saved the day with guns." And she makes a very good point here. She continued to say that the issue that likely spurred the shooting was violent from the left against President Trump and the GOP. She referenced the effigy of President Trump being assassinated in a Central Park, New York City play. And Lesh said the shooter, James Hodgson, was feeding off the poison spread by such violent rhetoric. And that's exactly right. She's exactly right in all of this. We've seen since Donald Trump's inauguration and even before, major celebrities across the nation calling for his death and even acting it out in many different things, such as that Central Park play that just happened not too long ago. In a Snoop Dogg video, we saw him assassinating President Trump. Madonna has called for blowing up the White House. All these different things have happened, and they've called for the death of our president. It's unprecedented, the amount of death threats that are coming out of these celebrities across the nation. And so this is a leftist viewpoint that is being held by everyone now. It's being held by all of these different Democrats across the nation, and it's creating this very violent atmosphere. Suddenly it's okay for them to say that they want someone dead. And so that's what the issue is here. That's what the issue is, and that's why the shooting happened. It's not because gun control isn't strict enough, because that's just not true. It doesn't work. Gun control does not work whatsoever. Let's look at places, and I bring this up all the time. I'm sure you guys know it. Let's look at Chicago, the strictest gun control in our nation, and it has the worst murder rate in our entire nation. We can even look at Australia. They have completely banned firearms in their nation. Their violent crime rate is the exact same as it was before they banned guns. Criminals do not care about laws. If something is illegal, they're going to go around the law anyway. They're already trying to kill people, which is against the law. Why would a simple law against guns stop them from doing that? The fact of the matter is that these criminals do not care about laws. The only thing that these, as they would say, common sense gun control laws would actually accomplish is hurting the law-abiding citizens. What these Democrats have done is they have taken a tragic event where a leadership position congressman has been shot and is in critical condition, and they are using that for their own political gain. That's not how a normal person acts. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Liberalism just seems like a mental disease because they are taking a tragic event and they're using it for political gain. A normal, sympathetic human being wouldn't do such a thing. After every single shooting that is televised in this nation, after every terrorist attack, they don't blame the person, but they blame the gun. They blame an inanimate object. There's something wrong for them to think that an inanimate object is for fault for all of these different crimes. Gun control has not and will never work. And the fact that they keep and continue pushing it just shows that they don't actually look at facts. They don't actually look at the truth. We can see in places across the world and across our nation where gun control is strongest, murder rates are up, violent crime is up. And this is very obviously due to the fact that they are disarming these law-abiding citizens while giving criminals still the opportunity to purchase weapons. We can see that so many of these criminals don't obtain their weapons legally. They go through a black market or something so that they can get these guns. They're going to find a way if they have that ill intent in their mind. And so we're seeing now, governors, we're seeing congressmen, we're seeing senators, we're seeing all of these different Democrats across the nation calling for gun control, saying that Republicans had it going for them because they voted against gun control. I've seen not only comments on my Instagram page, but also tweets and Facebook posts of people saying that Republicans actually deserve this. But because Republicans voted against gun control, that they deserved what they got today. This is the kind of mindset the Democrats have now. This violent mindset that it's okay for congressmen and women to be killed because you disagree with them politically. It's a very violent mindset that they now have. Just because they disagree politically, they think that these people deserve to be shot at. It's astounding that anyone would ever even post such a thing online. That anyone would even think such a thing. These people have, I don't know why they started thinking like this. I don't know when exactly they snapped. But now they're calling for the deaths of not only President Trump, but congressmen and women just because of political differences. They become so violent, and it's been accepted as normal by the mainstream media because they're right along board with it. We've seen news anchors time after time saying that, yeah, Republicans might deserve this because they vote against gun control. We've seen news anchors saying that Donald Trump is deserving to be impeached because of all these different issues which aren't confirmed. We see this time after time where it is so biased and where these viewpoints are so violent, and it's not changing. And it's just getting worse, actually, as time goes on, because it is fueled by the mainstream media, because it is fueled by the celebrities in this nation, because it is fueled by these radical leftists that are being accepted as normal. And each time we see these shootings, I notice this more and more. And more people who used to be moderate leftists are suddenly becoming very radicalized. We see the Democratic Party now shifting into this very radicalized group, into this group that actually want violence to go down on anyone who is conservative, who think that our God-given rights shouldn't be rights. These are very radical people now. And yeah, I understand there's some moderate Democrats still. But a lot of them are being radicalized as we speak. And something's got to change here, because this radicalization is going to lead to a lot of different horrific events across the nation. And we just can't have that. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show. Hi everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive clip from the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. And every time that these universities take up this new social change that they're trying to promote, every time they take that up, they are taking away from that education instead. Because now they're focusing on these social changes instead of learning like they should be.
Ever wanted to learn the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 10 minutes? Are you looking for the truth about the so-called gender wage gap? Well, my friends, I'll let you in on a little secret. Prager University is a source that I use all the time when preparing for my show, The Jason Veely Program. Dennis Prager and his team have put together a remarkable organization that seeks to explain and spread Americanism through the power of the internet. Their short yet extremely informative videos reach more than 100 million people per year, and they want to reach you as well. Go on YouTube and type in Prager University, or go to prageru.com for all of their latest content. That's Prager, the letter U.com. PragerU.com.
Have you ever wanted to stand up to your liberal professor? Have you ever wanted to help expand the conservative movement? Well, it sounds like you would be a perfect fit for Youth Revolt. Youth Revolt is a team of dedicated young conservatives fighting liberal indoctrination within our school system. If you're interested in being a part of this team by being a columnist or even hosting your own radio show, go ahead and click the Join Now tab at the top of youthrevolt.org. You'll be asked to answer a few questions, and a Youth Revolt team member will respond to you quickly. Be a part of something bigger than you. Be a part of Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
My friends, I'm going to be blunt with you. There are a lot of frauds out there today. People who claim to be conservatives and yet, in one way or another, believe that more government is the solution to our problems. That's not what conservatism is about, and even more than that, that's not what our Constitution is about. I'm Jason Veely, a recent college grad who has the guts to say what needs to be said without pulling any punches. On my radio show, you can expect 100% pure conservatism every single weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Join me as we discuss history, liberty, and conservative philosophy in a style that is just as entertaining as it is educational. Who says we can't have fun tearing down the liberal establishment? Tune in to the Jason Veely program live every weeknight at 7 o'clock on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate!
Love trumping hate involves a lot more assault and arson than I expected. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt. Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. So we're seeing a lot of stuff still coming out about the different probes into not only Clinton, Trump, but everything basically surrounding Comey now. So now we're seeing that former FBI Director James Comey reportedly told members of Congress that he had a frosty exchange with former Attorney General Loretta Lynch last year when he discussed her possible interference in the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. It reported that in the closed session following Comey's testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee last Thursday, the former FBI director, told lawmakers that he confronted Lynch over a sensitive document, reportedly suggesting that she had agreed to stop any Clinton prosecution. During the closed-door conversation, Comey reportedly told lawmakers Lynch looked at the document and then looked up with a steely silence and directed Comey to leave her office. In the open session before the Intelligence Committee, Comey said that Lynch directed him to describe the Clinton email probe as a matter and not an investigation. Comey also said that the directive, combined with Lynch's unusual Arizona tarmac meeting with former President Bill Clinton, led him to make his independent announcement regarding the Clinton email probe last July. Comey testified that the tarmac meeting was a deciding factor in his decision to act alone to update the public on the Clinton email probe and protect the Bureau's reputation. Quote, "There were other things, significant items. The Attorney General directed me not to call it an investigation and call it a matter, which confused me." He continued, "That was one of the bricks in the load that I needed to step away from the department. That gave me a queasy feeling." Today, Chairman of Senate Judiciary Committee Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, sent a letter to committee ranking member Dianne Feinstein, of course a Democrat from California, and said that the committee will pursue investigations into any efforts to influence FBI investigations. So what this means is it's now being opened up into an investigation not only into whether Trump tried to influence investigations, but also whether Loretta Lynch or the Clintons tried to influence investigations here. So it's really backfiring on the Democrats here, having Comey actually testify. We saw that Comey's testifying in front of that committee there didn't actually help Democrats much. What he basically said is he had no proof of Donald Trump obstructing justice. He said that Loretta Lynch basically tried to obstruct justice. And in the actual memos that he used, he told them how it was leaked in February, but it actually contained information for discussions that he had with Trump in May or in March. So he basically proved that his memos about Trump were not true. So his actual testimony there didn't help him or the Democrats whatsoever, and in fact, it hurt them way more than it helped. And because of all this information that came out, we now see that President Trump is now accusing Loretta Lynch of illegal behavior in the Clinton email case. Just yesterday, he accused former Attorney General Loretta Lynch of, quote, illegal behavior in her handling of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's secret email server. alleging the ex-top cop provided, quote, protection for the Democratic presidential nominee. The president drew attention to Lynch ahead of a Senate hearing where his own Attorney General Jeff Sessions was set to testify on the Russian investigation, and he already testified. Trump's tweet appeared to draw on the related June 8th testimony of James Comey that we just talked about, who, of course, Trump controversially fired. So definitely Comey did reveal the letter Lynch told him to call it a matter instead of an investigation, as we just discussed. And so Trump then said, quote, Attorney General Lynch made law enforcement decisions for political purposes, gave Hillary Clinton a free pass and protection. Totally illegal. Now that's what he tweeted out at 5:45 in the morning yesterday. Trump's Twitter megaphone was the loudest strike in a growing drumbeat of officials calling for Congress to focus on Lynch. Senator Lindsey Graham said Sunday that he wanted Lynch to testify. Representative Peter King said he wants to see any memos Comey may have written about Lynch. Trump yesterday also knocked one of his favorite targets, the news media, for an agenda of hate, though he didn't specify which story or stories had riled him up. He wrote, quote, the fake news media has never been so wrong or so dirty. Purposely incorrect stories and phony sources to meet their agenda of hate. Sad. He then later added, quote, fake news is at an all-time high. Where's their apology to me for all of the incorrect stories? And the day after an appeals court cited one of his tweets in the judge's opinion to uphold the block of his travel ban, Trump looked to Twitter to rail against the court's decision, saying, quote, well, as predicted, the Ninth Circuit did it again. Rule against the travel ban at such a dangerous time in the history of our country. So we can definitely see that Donald Trump is, again, using Twitter basically to say all of his different thoughts. It's interesting the way he does use Twitter. Definitely uses it very early in the morning. The last tweet that I just quoted came out at 3:44 a.m. And so, but this does bring up a lot of new information about that special counsel. How he thinks that they need to be looking into Loretta Lynch, and how a lot of people actually are calling for that. A lot of people are calling for them to look into Loretta Lynch's involvement in the previous actual investigations here. And it's a big deal, folks, because we see that Loretta Lynch actually did basically obstruct justice here, telling Comey that it was a matter instead of an investigation, signing something that said that she would drop any investigation into Hillary Clinton. I mean, we already knew that Loretta Lynch was not above this. We already knew that she was politically driven. I mean, it was very obvious. But this is just now proof of it. This is proof that she actually did try to obstruct justice. And now, including that counsel, though, it has a lot of Democrats on it. And so what the Democrats want is basically what they look into. But now the special counsel is actually expanding who he's looking into, the one that was appointed a few months back, or a month back probably. So now the special counsel, Robert Mueller, his investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election has actually expanded. Now it's going to include an examination of whether President Donald Trump attempted to obstruct justice. So that's just coming out today, actually. Daniel Coates, the current director of national intelligence, and Administrator Mike Rogers, who is the head of National Security Agency, and Richard Leggett, Rogers' departed deputy, all agreed to participate in interviews with Mueller's investigators as early as this week. 5 anonymous sources briefed on the requests actually are saying this. So it's a lot of people that are saying that this is actually happening. It wasn't immediately clear if others have been actually questioned by the FBI on this matter. Investigators have also been looking for proof of possible financial crimes committed by Trump associates. Quote, the FBI leak of information regarding the president is outrageous, inexcusable, and illegal. Now that's Mark Corallo, a spokesperson for Trump's personal lawyer. So that's what he's saying about all of this information going down, and the special counsel's office actually declined to comment on the matter. The president previously said he had received private assurances from fired FBI Director James Comey that he wasn't under personal investigation, as we went over last week as a part of the probe. Comey confirmed that he had provided those assurances in testimony that he gave to the Senate Intelligence Committee last week. And that changed actually following Comey's firing, sources have told news agencies. The investigation into obstruction of justice into Trump started days after Comey was let go on May 9th. People familiar with the matter told the Post Mueller's office had resumed that work, and early interviews scheduled to take place with intelligence officials who indicate that his team is actively pursuing potential witnesses in and out of the government. March 22 exchange is allegedly of potential interest to Mueller, and Coates was attending a briefing at the White House then with officials from other government agencies. When that ended, Trump allegedly asked everyone to leave the room except for Coates and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Coates said that Trump had asked him if he could intervene with Comey to get the FBI to back off its focus on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn as part of the Russia probe. In his testimony last week, Comey claimed that Trump urged him to see your way clear of letting Flynn go. And of course, Trump has denied the comments. So in the actual testimony and in the prepared statement, Comey said that he believed that Trump meant to back off of Flynn. He never said that he actually did. And furthermore, this is one of the discussions that Comey had in his memo that he had a friend leak to the news in February, but this was a conversation that happened in May or in March actually. So he wrote this memo about a conversation in March, but he wrote the memo in February. This memo that everyone in the special counsel now and everyone on the left is seemingly depending on is just blatantly wrong. It's a lie. It's something written up by James Comey because he knew that Trump wasn't on his side. It's something that James Comey looked as a way of basically like reassuring that he would still be in the political spotlight, basically. Because this is just a blatant lie. It is a blatant lie that Trump said this because this memo came out months before the conversation even happened. So we can clearly see that James Comey is reaching here and that this really shouldn't be happening. And the fact that the special counsel is actually investigating Donald Trump is just... it's kind of sad that it's actually resulting to this. The special counsel is not really actually coming up with any conclusive evidence for anything. They're not conclusively saying anything about the investigation whatsoever. And now that they're expanding it for obstruction of justice, when there's no evidence whatsoever of it, it's just astounding that they continue to do this. It's astounding that they continue to expand these probes when there's no evidence whatsoever for any of it. Who they should be looking into is Loretta Lynch. Who they should be looking into is President Obama. They should be looking into Hillary Clinton. All these people who we actually have proof of them trying to influence investigations. We actually have proof of that. They should be looking into that. They should be investigating that. But instead they're looking into something where there's no evidence of it. They're looking into something that's just going to be a dead end. And this is all coming out of claims from James Comey in a memo that is wrong, in a memo that was written in February for a conversation in March. There's so many different details in this that the left is ignoring, but are very important. It's very important to notice that, yeah, that memo was wrong. Yeah, that memo was fake. So, yeah, the special counsel is now investigating into matters on a fake memo. They're now investigating these matters into something that there's no proof of it happening. And it's sad that Robert Mueller and his team are now expanding the special counsel. They're now expanding this probe because, honestly, it has gone on way too long. It's been on for a month and a half, probably, a month at least, and it hasn't found anything. This needs to actually come to a conclusion. because it is just tearing down the GOP and Donald Trump when it shouldn't be happening, because there is no proof of any of this. This all came out of wild claims that were brought forth by the left just because they were tired of losing the election, just because they needed an excuse for why they lost. And so it's just not really any truth here. It's just sad that they're continuing to legitimize these false claims. I'm going to take one last commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show. Hi, everybody. Connor Wise here with an exclusive clip from the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. How haven't all of these protesters realized that they are the exact reason why Donald Trump was elected in the first place? How haven't they realized that them being crybabies about every single thing in life is exactly why the American people rose up and voted for Donald Trump? They are the whole reason that they have all this misery currently.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Get out of here, you idiot. Sorry about that, folks. Jason Veely here, host of the Jason Veely program. I'm a 22-year-old conservative who is fired up and ticked off at the direction the progressive left have taken this country. Join me every weeknight at 7 o'clock as we promote liberty, advance conservative principle, and work to restore the Constitution of the United States. I can get loud and I can get passionate. How can we afford not to when so much is on the line? Tune in to the Jason Veely program, live every weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
Hi, everybody. Connor Wise here with an exclusive clip from the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. And every time that these universities take up this new social change that they're trying to promote, every time they take that up, they are taking away from that education instead. Because now they're focusing on these social changes instead of learning like they should be.
Calling all young conservatives. Have you ever wanted to write for an online publication? What about host your own conservative radio program? Now you can, thanks to youthrevolt.org. Youth Revolt is a conservative media network for young people, the goal of which is to educate our fellow Americans and also to expose the left-wing indoctrination that goes on in classrooms across the country. Become part of a team that is dedicated to taking the country back, one radio program or opinion column at a time. If you're interested, go to youthrevolt.org and click on Join Us on the top of the page. Fill out our brief questionnaire, and one of our representatives will be in touch with you in no time at all. The time to reclaim our future is now. Be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and join the movement today. Youth Revolt. Speak without fear. Ever wanted to learn the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 10 minutes? Are you looking for the truth about the so-called gender wage gap? Well, my friends, I'll let you in on a little secret. Prager University is a source that I use all the time when preparing for my show, the Jason Veely program. Dennis Prager and his team have put together a remarkable organization that seeks to explain and spread Americanism through the power of the internet. Their short yet extremely informative videos reach more than 100 million people per year, and they want to reach you as well. Go on YouTube and type in Prager University, or go to prageru.com for all of their latest content. That's Prager, the letter U.com. prageru.com.
Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate! Love Trump's hate!
Love trumping hate involves a lot more assault and arson than I expected. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt. Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I am your host, Connor Wise. Now, what we saw actually coming out of the Senate, I know they actually got something done. It's pretty surprising. But the Republican-led Senate now just voted decisively to punish Moscow for interfering in the 2016 election by approving a wide-ranging sanctions package that targets key sectors of Russia's economy and individuals who carried out cyber attacks. Senators just today passed the bipartisan sanctions legislation in a 97-2 vote, underscoring broad support among Republicans and Democrats for rebuking Russia after U.S. intelligence agencies determined Moscow had deliberately interfered in the presidential campaign. Lawmakers who backed the measure also cited Russia's aggression in Syria and Ukraine. Now, despite this, there's been no forceful response from President Donald Trump about Russia doing this. The president has instead sought to improve relations with Moscow, as we all know, and rejected the implication that Russian hacking of democratic emails tipped the election his way. Russian President Vladimir Putin's, quote, brazen attack on our democracy is a flagrant demonstration of his disdain and disrespect for our nation. Now that's from Senator John McCain. Then this was from just ahead of the vote. He continued, quote, but in the last 8 months, what price has Russia paid for attacking American democracy? Secretary of State Rex Tillerson offered tepid support for the sanctions measure, telling the House Foreign Affairs Committee he agreed with the sentiment among lawmakers that Russia must be held accountable for its meddling in the election. But Tillerson urged Congress to make the sanctions legislation doesn't tie the president's hands and shut down promising avenues of communication between the two former Cold War foes. He asked lawmakers to, quote, ensure any legislation allows the president to have the flexibility to adjust sanctions to meet the needs of what is always an evolving diplomatic situation. If the Trump administration decides to oppose these new sanctions, they definitely could be in a bit of a bind here. These sanction measures have been attached to a bill imposing penalties on Iran that the Senate is currently debating, and which also has strong bipartisan support. So the White House would have to reject stricter punishments against Iran, which it favors, in order to derail the parts of the legislation it may object to. Once the Iran bill is passed, the legislation moves to the House for action. The leaders of the Senate Banking and Foreign Relations Committees announced late Monday that they'd reached an agreement on the sanction package after intensive negotiations. The deal was forged amidst the firestorm over investigations into Moscow's possible collusion with members of Trump's campaign. House and Senate committees are investigating Russia's meddling, of course, and potential links to the Trump campaign. And the special counsel, of course, is conducting a separate probe. The measure calls for strengthening current sanctions and imposing new ones on a broad range of people, including Russians engaged in corruption, individuals in human rights abuses, and anyone supplying weapons to the government of Syrian President Bashar Assad. Broad new sanctions would be imposed on Russia's mining, metals, shipping, and railway sectors. The measure would punish individuals who conduct what the senators described as, quote, conducting malicious cyber activity on behalf of the Russian government. It also covered by the sanctions are people doing business with Russian intelligence and defense agencies. The package also would require a congressional review if a president attempts to ease or end current penalties. The review mechanism was styled after 2015 legislation pushed by Republicans and approved overwhelmingly in the Senate that gave Congress a vote on whether Obama could lift sanctions on Iran. That measure reflected Republican complaints that Obama had overstepped the power of the presidency and needed to be checked by Congress. Now, Senator Jeanne Shaheen, a Democrat from New Hampshire, and a member of the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee, said that the Senate has finally confronted Russia. Quote, this bipartisan amendment is the sanctions regime that the Kremlin deserves for its actions. Now, I've talked about sanctions on this program before, but not in a while, because we haven't really seen anything coming out about sanctions lately in the news. we can actually see, if we look at statistics, according to BBC, sanctions only work 33% of the time. Furthermore, there's actually no evidence on whether Russia actually influenced the election. There's no evidence whatsoever of that. Of course, they tried to put in some new news stories, fake news, into our news cycle using these weird sites that honestly no one should even be trusting. But we do way worse in many other elections across the world. I don't think that this was a very good decision to pass these sanctions. And furthermore, the way that they actually handled this was very undemocratic, very un-American. And it's something that has been happening in Congress for a very long time. What they're doing is they're just attaching this sanction package against Russia onto something against Iran, something that they know that Donald Trump can't veto, something they know that the administration can't go against. Otherwise, they're going to be going directly against what they've said to the country. And this is something that has been happening time after time, not only by Republicans, but also by Democrats. It's something that both sides actually use, where they just put all these different things together into one giant bill where no one has time to actually read through everything, where no one can actually veto it or vote against it, because one thing in there's one clause that will basically ruin everything if they go against it. It's a very tricky way of actually writing this legislation that I don't think should be happening. It's basically making it so that the checks and balances don't exist, that the Trump administration can't actually use their checks against Congress in this way. Sanctions don't work, folks. We have had sanctions on Russia since they invaded Crimea, and they still actually are in Crimea. Crimea is basically Russia now. We put sanctions on them for them invading Ukraine. And yes, they're still invading Ukraine. We put sanctions on them when they started supporting Assad. And yes, they're still supporting Assad. Sanctions don't actually work, folks, and we've put all of these sanctions on them before. These are just sanctions that we've actually used to a greater extent now. These sanctions don't work. There are other ways to try to, quote, punish Russia for their influence, as Democrats say, into this election. And this is not the way to do it. What this is doing is basically extending the notion that Russia was the reason that Trump was actually elected. And the fact that Republicans voted for this is it's astonishing. I don't think that they should have voted for this. This is just another piece of legislation that people in the Senate voted for just so that they can claim that they did something against an aggressor in re-election. And we saw that it was led by John McCain, someone who honestly is stuck in the past, someone who still thinks we're in the Cold War. Russia, they have different interests than us. So does England, so does France, so does China. All these nations do have different agendas, different interests than us. But we are still picking out Russia as the enemy because of the Cold War. Russia isn't our enemy anymore, folks. Our enemy is radical Islamic terror. Our enemy is North Korea. Our enemy is Iran. It's not Russia. Russia actually hasn't done anything to aggress against us in decades. Russia's not the one who are actually doing anything here. And these sanctions aren't going to actually have the desired effect. All it's going to do is waste U.S. money. That's all it's going to do. This is just another bill that they're passing that won't actually have the desired effects. And that happens all the time in Congress. It happens all the time that they pass these things that won't actually work. Do I think that Russia did try to put news articles into our news cycle? Of course. We've done the same thing in their elections. But I don't think that they actually had an influence on the election. The fact that the DNC leaks came out, that wasn't from Russia. That was actually from an aide within the DNC. There's a lot more evidence for that than towards Russia. So we can clearly see that this actually had no effect on the election whatsoever, and it's just a notion that Democrats have been carrying out to try to explain how Donald Trump won and Hillary Clinton lost. This is the same thing such as the memos and the special counsel that's going on. It's just these notions that Democrats created, and now they're being supported by people for some odd reason. Now they're being supported and legitimized by people when in fact we know that they're just not true. These sanctions aren't going to do anything. They're not going to work because sanctions don't work. 33% of the time they actually have any effect. We've had sanctions on Russia since before the Cold War started, and none of them have had an effect. This is not going to do anything, and the fact that only 2 people voted against it proves that there's a lot of senators who actually aren't looking at reality, that are just looking at re-election. All right, that's all for today's episode of the Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. You can find me on youthrevolt.org. Go ahead and search Youth Revolt up on Facebook. Find me on Instagram at @the_wise_conservative and on Spreaker at Spreaker.com/thewiseconservative. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in, and as always, God bless.